Welcome back to Chow Time Pods. Your host, Red. I got a video today from TheLouisZhao.
So there's apparently an Asian male dating crisis.
I don't know if you guys know this. Asian dudes are the least sought after demographic on every single dating app.
Nobody likes Asian guys, okay? That's just a biological fact.
I've never found an Asian guy attractive. I just never have.
Asian men get marginalized and isolated to the dating scene, as if we're damn near invisible.
The first time I came across clips like these, I dismissed.
That's why I think it's funny that, we have a lot of issues with men dating and men not being seen. I think Asian men have it the worst, one of the worst, like Asian men and like Indian men. But I don't really think it's that bad overall because Asian men do one of the best in life. So,
them as TikTok brain rot of the rage bait variety.
yeah.
I thought they were trying to disseminate racial divide where it did not exist, and took it as a sign to stop scrolling and go to bed. I didn't take them seriously at first because I was not aware of any first principles from evolutionary psychology that would allow me to make sense of a race-based dating disadvantage. You see, I thought that primates, such as ourselves, have evolved to find each other attractive based on traits relevant to survival or procreation, or both.
You would think that, brother, but height is not part of survival really nowadays. It's somewhat procreation because you want tall kids, but there's a lot of features that Asians have that aren't really made for survival.
For example, height and muscle mass are attractive in men because they're a signal for physical power and
That I
potency,
can understand.
which are important for survival and procreation. Handsome men are attractive because aesthetic traits like facial symmetry and healthy skin complexion signal health and a history free from infectious disease, which are also important for survival and procreation. Even more abstract traits like wealth and fame still have an evolutionary basis for why they are attractive. Wealth means owning a lot of resources,
This guy is going through the Asian method of just data.
and fame would demand something like having high status within the tribe in a primal environment. Both of these things are useful for survival and procreation by themselves, but they also signal competence, because a primate would have usually needed to have consistently outperformed their peers to be able to acquire a lot of resources or high status within the tribe in the first place.
True.
And competence is, of course, useful for survival and procreation. Now, what about race? Could being Asian or black or white or any other race signal anything useful about survival or procreation? Well,
I don't think the race itself signifies or signals to anything useful. It's just the archetype of that race. Asian men are just not built the same way as other men. We are the more smaller stature of men, and our average height is a little bit shorter than all the other men. So,
I couldn't think of any at the time. So this Asian male dating crisis business must be fake, right? Alright, cool. Thanks for watching, everyone. Easiest video ever. Well, I wish it was that easy. You see, although my initial reasoning through evolutionary psychology was structurally sound, it did not take into account the role of culture. Culture
Correct.
is one of those things important enough to separate humans from other animals, after all, and it influences us in profound ways. At times, it can make us behave in ways that seem counter to our evolutionary instinct to survive and procreate. Think about the kamikaze pilot in World War II who gave up survival to inflict damage on enemy ships, or the priests, monks, and nuns who've sworn oaths of celibacy, thereby giving up their prospect of procreation. Given that, I thought I should at least consider the possibility that culture could influence modern dating pattern too.
I can see someone like this gentleman here that is very data-driven, very educational-driven, to not see the outside world so much and see what Asian men or just men in general are experience in that dating market itself.
So I sat down and researched this topic. I quickly realized, however, that this was a rather heated area of public discourse, full of pseudoscience, algorithmically amplified rage bait, and references to research that don't exist. At first glance, it can be hard to tell if anyone is making sense. So in today's video, I want to take a deeper look at the Asian male dating crisis,
Check it out.
for the sake of my own sanity and also that of truth. I'll look past the rage bait and the apparent racial and political divisiveness and attempt to find the deeper signals beyond these surface-level noise. This one's important, guys. Our Asian brother's ability to get laid is on the line here. And perhaps if we can look...
You Asian brothers out there better be listening. And all the other brothers listen and just see what other men are experiencing.
at the facts together long enough with a tempered gaze, we can lower the temperature a bit in this part of the conversational landscape, which should at least help with our blood pressure, if not our collective sense-making. So let's get started with some stats, because the Asian male dating crisis is surprisingly well documented in research. For example, in 2018, Baruch and Newman's analysis found that Asian men are the least desirable ethnic category for heterosexual women, and consistently so across all 4 of the American cities under their study. Now,
Makes
Asian
sense.
men are not always the least desirable in every study, but they almost always rank close to the bottom. The exact ranking changes a bit depending on when and where the data is collected, as well as the ethnicity of the women from whom the data is collected. For example, OkCupid, a dating site, published their result over the course of 6 years. We can see that Asian men's rating change a bit from year to year, but are otherwise consistently one of the lowest from women of all ethnicity, with the exception of Asian women. By the way, you'll see a lot of people online saying that Asian men are so unpopular that even Asian women don't want to date them.
True.
That is not true.
True and not true. Like, I know a lot of men, Asian men, that are married to Asian women, but Asian women in America still prefer non-Asian men over Asian men, a good chunk of women.
Women do like Asian men. What is true, though, is that according to the data, Asian women also like white men. If you're wondering which one Asian women like more, I don't want to start some weird competition here, but the answer is that it depends on the year. Asian women rate one above the other in some years they don't. What is consistent is that Asian women have rated both Asian and white men as above average in attractiveness.
Okay.
So I don't see this as evidence for a dating disadvantage for Asian men with Asian women. It looks more like a dating advantage for white men. In any case, the reasonable conclusion
Makes sense. Reasonable.
is that Asian men's dating disadvantage is more applicable for non-Asian women specifically. And if you're wondering how much of a disadvantage being Asian is for men,
It was in the negatives.
there is a study from the University of Chicago and MIT that managed to quantify it with income, and it's brutal. They looked at how much more money a guy needs to make to compensate for his dating disadvantage. For instance, if a guy is really ugly, he needs to make an extra $186,000 per
Extra? Damn.
year above the median income to have the same luck in the dating market as someone who isn't ugly. If a guy is short, let's say 5'6", he needs to make an extra $221,000
Damn it. I'm only slightly above that, so I gotta make around the 180 range for my shortness.
per year to have the same luck as someone who isn't short.
And this says extra income. Well, it's not even your normal base salary. No, you have to make this on top of a normal base salary. Holy cow.
If a guy is Asian, he needs to make an extra $247,000 per year.
So I don't want to call myself ugly, but I am on the short side. And I'm Asian. I don't got a lot going for me, guys.
Have the same luck as a white guy with white girls. Now, caveat, this last measurement is only with white women. The study didn't provide the measurement for women of other non-Asian ethnicity,
I see.
unfortunately. So this isn't a true apple-to-apple comparison. Also, this is a study from 20 years ago, so don't take these numbers too literally. What we can conclude is that being Asian is a legitimate dating disadvantage for men in the West.
Yep.
And in certain contexts, being Asian can be worse than being short or ugly.
Damn.
But Asian men's disadvantage only...
I can't even imagine being Asian, which is like one of my favorite things to be, is such a huge detriment in the dating market for us. I guess. I mean, okay, we get to make money, I guess, but we just don't get to have amazing dates.
exist in the West. It's important that we don't over-extrapolate and conclude that Asian men have a disadvantage everywhere in the world. I see people do this quite a bit online. They'll say things like, Asian guys don't have a chance, passport bros will go to Asia and take all their girls, the local Asian dudes can't compete, etc. Well, that's not true. I haven't seen any evidence to suggest being Asian is a disadvantage for men in Asia. In fact, since most people in Asia are Asian, most dating studies there ignore the racial category altogether. The data that does exist suggests that Asian women overwhelmingly choose Asian men. International marriages, for instance, are marriages between a local and a foreigner.
This is why I said mostly in the West is where you see the divide between Asian women and Asian men. Like Asian women are sought after so much here in the West, where men, again, we're on the bottom of the barrel. So I can see how in other countries it's not so apparent.
They account for about 10% of total marriages in Korea, less than 4% in Japan, and less than 1% in China. And the majority of these international marriages are still Asian marrying other Asians. It's just Asians.
10% of a nation is still a decent amount in Asian countries, in my opinion.
Of a different country, like a Chinese guy marrying a Korean girl or a Japanese guy marrying a Vietnamese girl. This is not to say that there are no women in Asia who prefer men of a different race. There just aren't enough of them as to create a measurable disadvantage for local men. In other words, Asian men are doing just fine in Asia. But once they get to the West, they start struggling. The question is, what is causing this? Now, the first cause is something called homophily, which basically means in-group preference. It refers to our tendency to form ties with people who are similar to us. This is not necessarily racial in nature. It can be in accordance with any traits like age, education, religion, language, hobbies, etc. In-group preference is also not necessarily racist or insidious. It's a human nature, if you will, observed across culture.
That's why I said, people like their own. Their own may not be of a race. It may be like certain demographics that you belong to. People just like their own.
And even across species. Many animals exhibit behaviors of in-group preference. In terms of race, in the context of dating, in-group preference means that people usually prefer to date within their own race. Now, Asians are a minority in the West. For example, in the US, they are about 6% of the population. As a result, Asian men can seem less popular in the West simply as a result of math. Let me show you. Let's say I'm conducting a study about dating preference. I recruit 10 women as subjects. 8 of them are green, 2 are blue. As a result of in-group preference, the green women will prefer green men. The blue women will prefer blue men. Now, if I aggregate this result in an unsophisticated manner, I could start saying things like, study shows that most women prefer green men. 8 out of 10 women prefer green men over their blue counterpart. So on average, women see blue men as less attractive.
I can see that.
Oh my goodness, there is a dating crisis for blue men. Your average Redditor will then pick that up, it gets on TikTok and goes viral, rage baiting the entire blue man community. And the next thing you know, some guy on YouTube has to
damn poor blue man group
make a video about it. What I'm saying is this. It's possible that most women in the West don't prefer Asian men because most women in the West aren't Asian.
True.
As a result of in-group preference, it's not necessarily surprising to see Asian men as one of the least preferred ethnic groups when Asian are a small minority of the total population.
But it makes sense to me. The logic is sound.
But in-group preference is not the only factor causing Asian men's dating disadvantage. There are nuances in the data that confirms this. For example, if you look at OkCupid's result, you'll see that, yes, women tend to have lower quick match score with men outside their race, which is expected from in-group preference, but their score with Asian men are especially low. That is often lower than men of other ethnicity who are also of a different race. In other words, there seems to be an extra penalty against Asian men on top of in-group preference. Also, remember that study that shows how much more money a guy needs to make to compensate for their dating disadvantage? They found that to have the same luck as a white guy with white girls, a Hispanic guy needs to make $77K more, a black guy needs to make $154K more, and an Asian guy needs to make $247K more. So Asian men need to compensate the most.
This is all for white women, though. So, I don't know. I don't think very many, I don't know. I can't even say that. I think a lot of Asian guys do like white women. I particularly don't really care for white women that much. But even my cousin married a white woman, so I guess Asians do like white women.
Which again shows this extra penalty against Asian men on top of in-group preference. So the question is, what is causing this extra penalty? Well, Western media is one of the most referenced
True.
causes. For a long time, Asian men have not been portrayed in the best of light in media. There actually weren't that much portrayal of Asian men in media to begin with. For example, across the 1,300 top-grossing film between 2007 to 2019, less than 6% had speaking characters that were Asian or Pacific Islanders. And when Asian male characters do appear on screen, they usually fall into a series of one-dimensional stereotypes, many of which are negative: nerdy, geeky, weak, weird, or otherwise treated as the butt of the joke.
You're gonna fuck on me? Nobody's gonna fuck on you! We're on your side! I hate Godzilla! I hate him too!
And even when they are portrayed in a positive light, they are typically asexual, such as a wise martial art guru who are strong but otherwise never get laid. The best example of this is a movie called Romeo Must Die.
I figured he was going to bring this movie in. They were going to have a kiss at the end, but then they removed it.
From the year 2000. The movie is loosely based on the classic Shakespearean romance story, Romeo and Juliet, but with a modern action twist. The male lead is played by Jet Li, a famous Asian martial art action star. Jet Li kicked ass in that movie, so I would say it's a pretty positive portrayal of an Asian character. But since the movie is based on Romeo and Juliet, you'd think that the romantic theme would be mandatory, right? Well, no.
Somewhat.
What we ended up seeing is the Asian guy getting friend-zoned in real time. He didn't even get to kiss the girl in the end. Famously, there was originally a kiss scene at the end of the movie, but it got cut out and replaced with a hug scene because the original kiss scene didn't test well with the audience. Perhaps the Western audience was not used to seeing Asian characters having romantic interactions with women outside their race back then. Now,
I mean, that was one of the big things that Jackie Chan always talks about. Like, he wants to be in romance movies and stuff, but he can't. Asian men just don't really get that, especially action star type people. I mean, maybe just Asian action star type people. I think all the other action stars actually get laid.
what's shown on screen matters because media portrayal of a minority group has an effect on how the broader culture perceives that group in real life.
I never even thought that this was actually such a big deal overall as I grew up, but now that I'm, older and a little bit more wiser, like, oh yeah, it makes sense. If you keep portraying a certain group as just kind of not attractive or a certain group as always thuggish, people tend to kind of gravitate towards those thoughts.
If women in the West rarely or never see Asian men portrayed as attractive or romantically relevant, when they see Asian guys in real life, they'll perceive them through that impression to some degree, if only subconsciously. This impression of the asexual Asian men is then further amplified on social media. Now, one thing that makes social media different from traditional media is the algorithm, and the algorithm love outrage. Some people have figured out that when you make fun of Asian men with negative stereotypes, it makes them angry. That anger fuels engagement, which makes the content go viral. And the result is a strange phenomenon on social media of all these viral clips of people making fun of Asian guys and getting tons of views for it.
I had to stop and just ask you if I could get your phone number. Sorry.
This is my husband.
Oh, I'm your husband. I thought you were like your gay best friend or something.
What's even stranger is that a lot of this type of content are from Asian women. There are Asian women who will go onto public platforms and announce to...
I think it's just a woman thing. Remember that hating men and just trying to be viral, trying to be, one of the girls, what's going to make them the most clout. And hating on Asian men is the biggest for Asian women. That gives them the most clout. So I don't even think they genuinely hate Asian men in any way. They just say these things because that's what everybody else is saying. And they want to be like everybody else that's popular.
To the world a slew of false negative stereotypes about Asian men.
And people are always like, you don't like Asian guys? I'm like, no, I like regular people.
They're slobs, they just watch anime all day, play video games all day, and you're an incel.
This is not all Asian women, of course. Most Asian women are not racist. This is a very small but vocal...
Are you sure about that, bro? I think most Asians are racist.
...group of Asian women who, for some reason, seem to be very dedicated to the project of denigrating the men of their race. So much so that there is now a name for these women called Aunty Lou. Now, I want to linger on the term Aunty Lou for a bit, because the way that this term has been used online illustrates a common moral confusion that I want to highlight. First of all, I don't like the term Aunty Lou. I don't even like it semantically. Like Lou is not an uncommon Asian last name. There are women whose last name is actually Lou, and they are catching heat for no reason. But more importantly, the way that this term has been used collapses two different behaviors with very separate moral implications into one insult. For example, there are Asian women out there who simply have a romantic preference for men outside their race. They don't hate,
which is perfectly fine. I've never said anything that was against that. I think if you have a certain preference in race of, other race or even your own race, I think it's perfectly fine for women to have this preference or men to have this preference. I just hate the denigrating your own race thing.
Asian men. They're not racist against Asian. They're just not attracted to Asians.
True.
That is totally fine. Yet
100%.
These women are being called Aunty Lou online. That people accuse them of internalized racism for not wanting to date Asian men, to the point where some of these women start to feel shame around their dating preference. I want to be very clear here. There's nothing wrong with having a romantic preference. It's totally fine to have a type. In a free society, you're free to pursue your type.
100%.
No one should have to endure such abuse simply for having a romantic preference. Now, let's say some of these women decide to go onto public platforms and announce their romantic preference to the world.
I'm not into Asian guys.
Kind of have a no dating Asian sort of policy.
Now, that's a strange decision, but it's a free country and you have the right to do that, so it's still fine so far. But then she goes, I don't date Asian men because insert false negative stereotypes about Asian men.
They're slobs, they just watch anime all day, play video games all day, and you're an incel.
I actually covered this person like a year or two ago about, trashing Asian men. Now she removed all of her videos because she has an Asian son.
And people are always like, you don't like Asian guys? I'm like, no, I like regular people.
Now that's racist. And to be extra clear, it's not racist to not want to date Asian men. It's not racist to announce that to the world, although it's a bit strange. But it is racist to reduce a gender of an entire race of people into a false negative stereotype. In a way, she's not just telling the world that she doesn't date Asian men. She's also trying to convince the world to not date Asian men too. I'm not sure why these women are so passionate about cock-blocking the men of their race, but it's working. When people see...
It might be because they want men of their race, right? Maybe think about just like what Alexander Grace video said was women are just trying to eliminate the competition. Imagine if they know that Asian men are their best men and they like Asian men. How do they make sure that only Asian women get Asian men? By making every other race and everybody else think that Asian men are like the worst. Maybe that's probably the best way to kind of go about it for women. And then Asian men just kind of deal with the repercussions of women mating strategy.
Clips like these from Asian women, it creates a visual illusion of sort. Because she is Asian, it makes what she's doing seem less racist. At the same time, her being Asian gives her perceived authority over the subject. People think, look, she's Asian. She must know what she's talking about regarding Asian men. So even though what she is saying is both racist and not true, it's perceived as both true and not racist.
It's funny because there's actually a lot of women that don't even grow up as Asian. They grew up in some Western country or Midwestern state or something, and they grew up with white families, but they still have this preference and say the same thing about Asian men. That's when you're like really like, You've never even dealt with Asian men, but you still have the exact same preferences about why you wouldn't want to date Asian men.
So it's very effective at spreading negative stereotypes about Asian men. Now, what seals the deal is how Asian men behave in response to seeing all this wind at their face when it comes to dating. For example, many Asian men become discouraged and stop trying to date outside their race altogether, even though there might be women outside their race they are attracted to.
Hispanic women actually like Asian men decently. I've dated a good amount of Hispanic women that said that they preferred Asian men. I don't know if it's just because preference or, the reasons of Asian men or whatever it is, but black women too, tell you the truth.
Personally, I believe that it's almost impossible to stereotype a person once you get to know them. But many girls in the West never get a chance to do that with Asian men because Asian men don't pursue them. As a result, this stereotyped impression of Asian men remains at large. Now, what makes this problem all the more insidious is that there is a dynamics of self-fulfilling prophecy here, such that simply knowing about the Asian man's dating disadvantage can become a disadvantage in and of itself for Asian men. You may not know this, but I am Asian, and yes, thank you. Now, if I firmly believe that being Asian is a disadvantage, that will probably make me feel insecure and less confident when interacting with women. Lacking confidence is unattractive, which will probably cause women to reject me more. I will then attribute these rejections to the fact that I'm Asian, thereby reaffirming my belief that being Asian is a disadvantage, and it's a downward spiral from there. Interestingly, I never thought that the Asian male dating crisis was a thing until I started making this video. So when girls didn't like me in the past, I attributed that to, my haircut or what I was wearing or, whatever was the insecurity of the day, but it was never my race. Now, having seen the data, I think it's quite likely that there were women who were uninterested in me because I'm Asian. But I just never registered it as such. As a result, I never went down the downward spiral of...
Which is a good thing, You don't want to play the victim, right? Oh, just because I'm Asian, just because I'm short or whatever it is, I can't get women. You don't want that.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, looking back, it's clear that my impression was objectively false. But it was, in a way, productive, because I can't change the fact that I'm Asian. So any effort spent ruminating on that would have been wasted efforts. So I'm quite glad that I never knew about this issue before, but it's too late for us now. If you're an Asian guy watching this, I've just spent an entire video telling you every which way that the Asian male dating disadvantage was real. I have cursed you with knowledge. You've heard the facts, you can no longer...
They always say, ignorance is bliss. Sometimes people know too much. Nowadays, people know way too much about the world and what's going on, and people care about Middle East and all these other things when really you might not have known about that and you wouldn't have cared about it because you didn't know about it.
I don't hear them, so let me do some damage control. First of all, I'm not suggesting that we should be woefully blind of facts. Asian men are indeed disadvantaged in the Western dating market. That is a fact. We shouldn't bury our heads in the sand about it. What I am saying, though, is that it's unproductive to fixate on things we can't change. And the best practice here is obvious and even cliche at this point. We all know this, to work on the things we can change and let go of the things we can't and have the wisdom to know the difference. But that is, of course, easier said than done. So if you are really struggling to move on from this issue mentally, allow me to offer you the following control.
I actually think a lot of Asian men have this issue. I talk to a decent amount. I see a decent amount of Asian men. They really down in the dumps about being an Asian man and how most women don't really like them because we're here in the United States. Most of us, even if we're surrounded by some of Asians, a lot of Asians in our neighborhood and things like that, there's still way more of other races than there are Asians. Well, it's like 50%, 40% white, 16-ish% black, 30%-ish Hispanic, and then we're 6%. So it makes sense that a lot of Asians are still attracted to other races, but because we have this ineptness that we know about ourselves, we just kind of like, well, maybe I don't want to deal with them, or I'm not going to go to them because they probably don't like Asians.
Control the experiment. I'm lucky to have done a bit of traveling at this point and gotten to see a few different cultures. In particular, I've lived in both Asia and the West for extended periods of time. Now, when I interacted with girls in these different places, I have noticed that women have treated me with the same level of indifference across culture and geography. It strikes me as one of those unifying human experience. Now, as I mentioned before, the Asian male dating crisis only exists in the West. It doesn't exist in Asia. Yet I observed that women in both the West and Asia treat me the same. What could this mean?
All the women are rejecting you. Who's got the problem? It's not all the women. Well, yeah, all the women are rejecting you? Right. It's you.
In other words, it means that what is blocking my success with women is probably not just my ethnicity. I probably have other things to worry about here. It gives me permission to move on from fixating on my ethnicity and start working on the things I can affect. So if you find yourself fixating on your ethnicity more than you'd like, go to Asia and give this experiment a try, and let me know how it goes. Now, in the spirit of ending on a hopeful note, I'm happy to report that it's 2025 now, and dating Asian men seem to have become more popular in the West, or at least less unpopular. This is in part due to the changing media landscape. At the time of my writing the script, the most popular animated film in theater is from Japan.
Right.
The most viewed season of any TV show on Netflix is from Korea. 4 out of the top 5 most played video game on Steam are from Asia. Spotify's chart update on a weekly basis, but it's common to see songs of Asian origin on there too. The list can go on here, but the pattern is that Asian media, like K-pop, Korean drama, anime, etc., which have traditionally had a niche following in the West, have recently become much more mainstream. There has also been an increase in Asian representation in Western media as well. If you count the speaking or named characters of the 100 top grossing fiction films, 3.4% were Asian in 2007. That's gone up to 15.9% in 2022. So more than quadrupled in a decade and a half. Now, it's possible that some of this is due to activism. That is, people putting more Asian roles on screen because they think it's morally righteous to have more media representation of minorities. And there are people who worry about this, that this could impact the quality of the product. For example, if movie studios are choosing Asian actors preferentially instead of choosing the most qualified actors, that could result in worse movies. And indeed, most of us probably don't have beef with activism until it makes our movie bad. I don't think we need to worry too much about that in this case, though. The truth is, people didn't watch Squid Game because they want to support Asian minorities. People watch it because it's the most entertaining option in the Netflix catalog. But the movie producers decide to fund the Crazy Rich Asian project. Some of them might be motivated by activism, but most probably just want to make money. That movie ended up being the highest grossing romantic comedy of the decade in the US. Asian culture is a profoundly underrated source material for entertainment and content in general. And it's just a matter of time before capitalism start capitalizing on it. I can always count on corporations to be greedy for more money, so the trend of increasing Asian representation in media is somewhat inevitable, in my view. The free market will pretty much take care of itself here. And just as the negative portrayal of Asian men in media caused Asian men's dating disadvantage, the increase in positive portrayal is now slowly removing it. Dating Asian men are becoming more normal in the West. For example, in the book The Dating Divide, published in 2021 by the University of California Press, the authors found that Black and Latino women are now about as likely to respond to Asian men as they are to...
I said it. Black women and Asian women. Black women and Hispanic women. Starting like Asian guys. We have a chance.
...and of their own race. So the effect of in-group preference seemed to have disappeared to some degree. White women still show in-group preference, but no longer avoid Asian men any more than Black or Latino men. So the extra penalty on top of in-group preference that we spoke about earlier seem to have disappeared in these observations as well. And these findings point to a trend of improvement of Asian men's image in Western culture. There's also evidence from qualitative interviews. Some interviewees explicitly express attractions towards Asian men. They say things like, Asian guys tend to be very smart, ambitious, more interesting, etc. Obviously, I'm an example of what they're talking about. So there are women in the West with romantic preference for Asian men. They're not a majority, but I wouldn't be surprised that in some contexts, being Asian can be an advantage for dating. For example, Coffee Meets Bagel, a dating app, reported last year that Asian and Pacific Islanders men are the most popular ethnic category on their app. Now, Coffee Meets Bagel's demographic skews towards Asian, so maybe there's a degree of selection effect there where women who choose that app are more likely to like Asian men or at least don't hate them. I've also come across advice that says Asian men should go to Asian-themed social events like K-pop nights or mahjong board game parties. The logic is that these...
I don't really like K-pop like that, nor do I like mahjong, but I am down.
events self-select for people who appreciate some aspect of Asian culture.
That makes sense.
And by extension, probably like Asian men or at least don't hate them. Anyway.
Go find people that are gonna like you for you, or at least like you for the preferences that you like or have. Well, makes sense.
I'm not trying to give dating advice here. But the broader theme I want to leave you with is that the dating project is not totally doomed for Asian men, contrary to how it is often portrayed online. If you're an Asian guy watching this, I hope you get the impression that there are many proactive things you can do to be the change you want to see in the world, which is a quote from Gandhi, or to stop complaining and go do something productive, which is a quote from my mother. I'll let you pick whichever one works for you.
Shout outs to Louis for a great video. No, I thought he covered it really well. I do think Asian men have a disadvantage, but the disadvantage isn't that big, right? It just seems big because there's not very many of us Asians out there overall, and you know, culture and everything. But as he said, K-pop grows, anime grows, just men, Asian men kind of working out more and doing more physical things to kind of be more westernized. It seems to bring up more Asian men in the eyes of Western women, which is a good thing, you know. And I think every race, every group of people, especially men, all have very similar things, you know, like Hispanic men, you might have some downfalls of Hispanic men. Black men, you might have some downfalls of black men, but you're still able to kind of overcome some of those things by the individual things that you do yourself. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. I really appreciate that, and I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.